Black Janitor saw the symptoms everyone ignored and ended up saving the life of the millionaire CEO. He froze when he saw Andrew bent slightly, one hand to his chest. Janitor's wise move turned the situation from millionaire boss. Actually, at that night, the lights of the city shimmering like a restless sea beneath the towering glass spire of Drake and Company Tower. On the 50th floor, the only sound was the clicking of keys and the quiet hum of machinery keeping the air perfectly cool. Andrew Drake, a man who had built an empire on precision and ruthlessness, sat alone at his massive desk, drowning in numbers and projection. His silver cufflinks glimmered whenever his hand shifted across the keyboard, the light catching them as if mocking the tremor in his fingers. He paused, rubbed his chest briefly, a flicker of pain crossing his sharp features, then forced it away with the same determination he used to silence rivals and critics. He had no time for weakness, not tonight, not ever. Down below, far removed from the polished luxury of Andrew's office, James Wilson pushed his squeaky janitor's cart to the lower hall. The basement smelled faintly of bleach and old concrete, a world away from the marble lobbies and gold-trimmed conference rooms above. James moved slowly, methodically, mopping where no one bothered to look, humming quietly to himself to break the silence. His uniform was faded, the company logo on his chest nearly worn off, but his posture remained upright, disciplined. He glanced upward now and then toward the elevator shaft that seemed to climb endlessly into the building's heart. He had walked every floor of this tower, learned its quirks, its flaws, its hidden leaks and drafts. 15 years of invisible labor had made him part of the structure itself. At the very top, Andrew finally stood, stretching his back with a grimace. He yanked his jacket from the chair and slipped his phone to his ear, barking orders with no regard for the hour. No delays. He snapped into the receiver. I don't care what the doctors say about stress. I've got Zurich next week. Find me someone who doesn't whine about deadlines. I don't pay for excuses. He ended the call sharply and strode into the hallway, his steps quick but uneven. The elevator dinged softly as it opened onto the executive floor, where James happened to be working that night. The janitor dragged his cart carefully along the polished corridor, the mop slapping wetly against the marble. He barely had time to pull back when Andrew swept out of the elevator, nearly colliding with him. Watch where you're going, Andrew muttered, irritation in his tone. James immediately stepped aside, bowing his head slightly. Sorry, sir. Evening. Andrew gave a distracted nod and moved past, already pulling at his briefcase strap. James' eyes lingered, catching the businessman's hand gripping the rail a little too tightly. His forehead damp with sweat, though the air was cool. The boy inside James, the one who had watched his brother collapse years ago from something similar, stirred uneasily. He frowned as Andrew disappeared into the distance. In the parking garage minutes later, Andrew leaned heavily against the hood of his luxury car, breathing raggedly. The sound of rubber wheels squeaking over the concrete echoed to the garage as James pushed his cart into view, collecting trash bags. He froze when he saw Andrew bent slightly, one hand to his chest. Sir, you okay? James asked, voice cautious but firm. Andrew straightened quickly, adjusting his tie as if to hide any weakness. I'm fine, just tired. He pressed the unlock button and the car beeped obediently. James didn't move. His eyes, worn from years of seeing too much, stayed on Andrew. No, sir, that don't look like tired. Andrew's head turned sharply, irritation flaring. I said I'm fine. Go do your job. James lowered his gaze, nodding respectfully. But inside, worry gnawed at him. He remembered his brother's stubbornness, the way he had brushed off the signs until it was too late. He pushed his cart slowly onward, but the image of Andrew's pale face burned in his mind. Later, in the small janitor's closet, James sat on a stool, staring at the cracked tile floor. The building above hummed with power, but down here it was just silence and dust. He rubbed his face with both hands, then reached into his wallet, pulling out an old folded photograph. His brother, young and vibrant, holding up a fishing pole with a wide grin. James' eyes watered as he whispered, not again. I can't just stand by. He folded the picture carefully and tucked it back, his jaw set with quiet resolve. Morning brought chaos to the executive floor. Assistants shuffled papers, tablets beeped, coffee cups rattled. Andrew stormed into the glass-walled meeting room, the weight of authority trailing behind him like a cloak. He spoke with rapid precision, tearing through numbers, slamming his finger against document. We're merging with Hallberg Industries in 3 weeks. Every liability gets buried, every asset polished. No excuses. One assistant hesitated, leaning forward. Sir, maybe you should. Andrew cut him off with a glare. Don't tell me what I should do. Just do your job. The assistant shrank back. Andrew pinched the bridge of his nose, pressing briefly at his temple. No one dared comment on the sweat beading at his brow, or the subtle way his left hand trembled on the table. Just outside the glass, James silently emptied bin, moving with slow precision. His gaze drifted into the room. He saw again That fleeting wince, the shift in posture, the hand pressing against the chest as if to ease invisible pressure. James' grip tightened around the trash bag. He had seen this movie before, and he hated how it ended. Later, Andrew stood alone in the lavish restroom, splashing cold water onto his face. His reflection in the mirror was still sharp, expensive suit and tie perfectly in place, but the eyes staring back were rimmed with exhaustion. He leaned against the sink, knuckles white, breath short. For a moment, just a brief one, he let the fear show in his features. Then the mask returned, pride straightening his shoulders. The door opened softly. James entered, mop in hand, pausing as he noticed Andrew. "Morning, sir." Andrew glanced at him in the mirror. "Morning." James set the mop against the wall, stepping a little closer. "You sure you're all right?" Andrew's eyes snapped to him, irritation sparking. "Why do you keep asking me that?" James didn't flinch. His voice was calm but steady. "Because you ain't. I've seen this before, and I'd rather be wrong than too late." The silence stretched heavy. Andrew stared at him in the mirror, his expression unreadable. Finally, he yanked a towel, dried his face briskly, and strode out without another word. James watched him go, the weight in his chest heavier than before. That night, the parking garage echoed with the screech of Andrew's car as it swung carelessly into a spot. He stumbled out, jacket half undone, his breath ragged. He pressed hard against his chest, trying to will away the tightness, but his knees buckled, sending him down hard against the car. At the far end, James was wheeling his cart toward the exit. Exhaustion etched into his every movement. His eyes widened when he saw Andrew collapse to one knee, clutching at the air for balance. "Sir," James shouted, his voice booming across the cavernous space. Andrew tried to push himself up, his voice breaking. I'm fine," but the word died in his throat as his body sagged forward. James dropped his mop and ran, reaching Andrew just in time to catch him before he hit the concrete. Andrew's weight pressed heavy against him, his breast shallow, eyes flickering in panic. "Somebody help." James roared, his voice echoing into the emptiness. But the garage was deserted. Only the low hum of lights answered him. Andrew's lips moved faintly, whispering words James couldn't make out. He was slipping fast. James lowered him gently to the ground, one hand supporting his head. The years collapsed in an instant, his brother's final moments flashing in his mind. The same pale face, the same gasping breath. He refused to let history repeat itself. "No, sir," James muttered fiercely. "Not tonight. Not while I'm standing here." And in that moment, with no one else around, James knew the truth. The life of Andrew Drake, the billionaire who had walked past him for years without so much as a glance, now rested entirely in his hand. Andrew's body was frighteningly heavy against James, his breaths coming in shallow, broken rasp. The sound of them echoed in the cavernous garage like the ticking of a clock, each one a reminder that time was running out. James cradled his head gently, pressing his ear close to listen for steadiness. The pulse he felt against his fingertips was weak and frantic, like a bird flapping helplessly inside a cage. "Stay with me, sir," James whispered, his voice both command and plea. "Don't you dare quit on me now." Andrew's lips moved again, faint, whispering fragments of words. James leaned closer, catching pieces. Bored, Zurich, no time. Even now, in the face of collapse, the man's mind clung to business deal. James shook his head, anger and pity colliding inside him. "You think any of that matters if you're gone? What good's all the money in the world if you ain't here to spend it?" His voice cracked, memories stabbing sharp. "I buried my brother because he said the same damn thing, thought he could push through, thought he had no time. Well, time made its own decision." His hands moved instinctively, checking Andrew's airway, loosening the suffocating tie. He remembered CPR training from years back, a requirement long forgotten by most but not by him. He tilted Andrew's head, pressing his hands down in rhythm, counting under his breath. Sweat streamed down his face, every press a battle, every breath he forced into Andrew's lungs a prayer. Come on, come on." The sound of approaching footsteps broke the stillness. A young security guard, barely 20, rounded the corner with wide eyes. "What's happening?" James didn't even look up. "Call 911. Now. Tell him it's a possible heart attack. Move!" The boy froze, staring at the billionaire gasping on the ground. James snapped his head up, fury blazing. "I said move." That snapped him out of it. The guard scrambled for his radio, voice shaking as he relayed the emergency. Andrew's eyes fluttered open for a second, unfocused, pupils dilated. His hand gripped weakly at James' sleeve, clutching as though the janitor was the only anchor left in the storm. His voice rasped, barely a whisper. "Don't let me die." James' chest tightened. He leaned closer, his words fierce and certain. "Not on my watch. Not tonight." Minutes stretched like hours. The pounding of James' compressions, a shallow gasp, the echo of sirens finally piercing the silence above. Red and blue lights flashed faintly through the concrete slats of the garage as paramedics stormed in with a stretcher. "Step back, sir. We'll take it from here," one of them ordered. kneeling beside Andrew. James hesitated, hand still on Andrew's chest, his breath ragged. He didn't want to let go, as at the moment he released him, Andrew's life might slip away for good. But finally he pulled back, stumbling slightly to his feet. His hands trembled, streaked with sweat and dirt. The medics worked swiftly, attaching monitors, sliding an oxygen mask over Andrew's face. Numbers beeped, commands flew back and forth. James stood back, his heart pounding as he watched them lift the man onto the stretcher. For years, Andrew had been a name on a building, a shadow behind tinted windows, a face on magazine covers. But tonight, he was just flesh and blood, fragile and mortal. As they wheeled him away, Andrew's eyes flickered open one last time, catching James' silhouette in the blur of motion. His lips moved beneath the mask. James couldn't hear the words, but he saw the look, the brief flicker of recognition, the silent acknowledgement that for the first time, Andrew truly saw him. The garage fell silent once the ambulance roared away, leaving James alone with his cart abandoned, mop lie on the floor where he had dropped it. He leaned against the wall, sliding slowly down until he was sitting on the cold concrete, his chest heaved as reality settled in. He had saved the life of a man who probably didn't even know his name until tonight. The next days unfolded in hushed whispers throughout the building. The billionaire had collapsed, rushed to the hospital, placed under emergency care. Meetings were postponed, travel canceled, the entire empire on pause because his heart had nearly stopped. James went about his work quietly, as always, mop in hand, trash bags collected. But wherever he went, eyes followed. Assistants whispered as he passed, pointing discreetly, their voices carrying phrases like he was there and he saved him. For James, none of it mattered. He didn't do it for recognition. He had done it because no one else would, because he refused to bury another man for stubborn pride. It was 3 days later when the call came. A young secretary approached James in the lobby, nervous and unsure. "Mr. Wilson, Mr. Drake would like to see you at the hospital." James blinked, gripping the handle of his mop tighter. No executive had ever asked for him by name. He nodded slowly, removed his gloves, and followed. The hospital room was stark and quiet, machines beeping softly in steady rhythm. Andrew sat propped against pillows, pale but alert, his silver hair slightly mussed, the arrogance usually fixed on his features replaced by something more human. His eyes lifted when James entered. For a moment, silence filled the space between them. Andrew studied him, really studied him, as though seeing him for the first time. Finally, his voice, hoarse but steady, broke the silence. "You saved my life." James shifted awkwardly, his cap in his hand. "I just did what needed doing." Andrew's lips twitched faintly, not quite a smile, but close. "Do you know how many people sit around me every day? Assistants, lawyers, board members, all of them, and not one of them noticed. Not one." He paused, his eyes narrowing slightly. "But you did." James lowered his gaze. "Sometimes folks see what they want to see, and sometimes folks like me see what others ignore. Ain't nothing special, sir, just experience." Andrew leaned back against the pillow, his gaze heavy with thought. "Experience that saved me." His hand shifted, reaching out slightly toward James. "I won't forget it." James hesitated before clasping the hand, rough palm against manicured fingers. In that grip lay something unspoken, respect, gratitude, acknowledgement of humanity that transcended their station. When James left the hospital that evening, the air outside felt different, lighter somehow. He walked home through streets buzzing with traffic, his steps steady, the world unchanged yet entirely transformed. For the first time in years, he felt seen, not just as a janitor, but as a man whose actions mattered. Back in the tower weeks later, Andrew returned, but something in him had shifted. He moved slower, listened more, his eyes carrying a weight they hadn't before. And when he passed James in the hallway, he no longer brushed by as though he were invisible. He stopped, nodded, sometimes even exchanged a word or two. One evening, as James polished the marble floors near the executive suite, Andrew paused beside him. "James," he said softly. The janitor straightened, surprised at the use of his name. "Thank you." James gave a small smile, nodding once. "Just glad you're still around to say it, sir." And with that, the two men continued on their paths, different worlds, but forever connected by a night when time nearly ran out, and the invisible man refused to look away. Because sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones no one notices, until the moment they save a life. Like, comment, share, and subscribe for more awesome and engaging videos.